Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching World Today. Is this an alternative to America that China is trying to create? Now, in a bold move to assert its leadership in global governance, China has spearheaded the establishment of the International Organization for Mediation, or what they're calling IOMED, the world's first intergovernmental body dedicated to resolving disputes through mediation. Now, launched in Hong Kong, IOMED aims to promote win-win cooperation and challenge Western-dominated dispute resolution frameworks, with 32 countries, including Pakistan, signing in on as founding members. Nepal's Foreign Minister Arzu Rana Deuba was also present in the ceremony as observer state representative. Now, China claims to have support of around 60 countries from Asia, Africa, Latin America and Europe, alongside 20 international organizations like the United Nations backing the initiative. The IOMED underscores China's ambition to reshape international diplomacy itself. Pakistan's decision to join IOMED as a founding member reflects its deepening alignment with China, its long-standing ally. Pakistan's involvement strengthens its diplomatic leverage, aligning with its strategy to internationalize the Kashmir dispute while benefiting from China's economic and geopolitical support through initiatives like the BRI or the CPEC project that lies within the BRI. For Pakistan, it's a chance to amplify its voice on issues like Kashmir. But India's absence from the founding members raises questions about the organization's ability to bridge divides in South Asia. IOMED's focus on mediation over adversarial litigation offers a fresh approach to resolving conflicts between nations, individuals, and private entities. Yet, China itself is involved in so many disputes. Now, aligned with the UN Charter's call for peaceful dispute resolution, the organization only aims to address criticisms of costly and biased systems like investor-state arbitration. With operations set to begin by early 2026, the world watches to see if IOMED can deliver on its promise of equitable dispute resolution or if it will primarily serve China's strategic interests only.
都是为了一个共同的目标。
The International Organization of Mediation takes it as its mission to mediate disputes between states or between a state and foreign investors and international commercial disputes based on the will of relevant parties. It will fill an institutional gap in international mediation and serve as an important public good in the field of the rule of law for better global governance. The birth of International Organization of Mediation can help transcend the you lose, I win, zero-sum mentality, promote the amicable resolution of international disputes, and foster more harmonious international relations.
没有一个政府间的法律组织。
Well, interestingly, this is an initiative by China that is involved in so many disputes: Taiwan, the South China Sea, the India-China border dispute, and yet it is coming to look for a space, an organization that really will work for mediation, or will it? To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by Howard Zhang. He's senior China analyst and former chief editor, BBC News Chinese, based out of London. Howard, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we're talking about China starting an organization on mediation. How would the West, particularly the US, be looking at this new organization, given the fact that you have China looking at the Taliban, looking at Saudi Arabia, Iran, and yet America is trying to mediate peace in many a conflict?
Exactly. And first of all, this is no, I guess, new move. It's a continuation of China's strategy of going after what they so-called global South. And back in Beijing, and documents after documents show that the Communist Party leading the country realized they're in a fight with US-led the West. And their conclusion is the current world order needs to be reset into what they called a multipolar world. And hence, if they cannot win over the leading Western nations to their sphere of influence, then the only way is to broaden their foothold in the global South. And this is just another step in the diplomatic as well as the more geopolitical kind of play, trying to win over as many as possible and also to broaden China's influence.
I go back to what I was discussing earlier with China involved in so many disputes, Howard, whether it's Taiwan, South China Sea, the India-Pakistan dispute. How can they really be peacemakers?
Well, that's I guess, a matter of perspective. It's the same thing as, when we talk about the Ukraine war, and Russia will have a different perspective than many of in the rest of the world. Rest of the world would see this as an invasion, and Russia would see themselves as defending their own interest. So that's the difference in perspective. The same thing here. From the Chinese side, especially the current ruling party side, they are trying to fight their corner and fight a way out in the current unjust world order. At least the world order is not giving the due respect to China. So in a way, if the current order is not tolerating China's what they consider legitimate voice and existence, then they have to fight their own corner and get their own voice heard. So whether this is they themselves are involved in so many disputes and border-wise and otherwise, that's another matter. For them, they just need their voice and influence to be heard, and that's why they're basing that in their own territories. And they got enough member to join to have a start.
Absolutely. Howard Zhang, thank you so much for joining us here on the network. We're also being joined by Professor Srikanth Kondapalli. He's a professor of China Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Kondapalli, just wanted to understand, there are over 30 countries that have already joined, and China says there are 60 countries who've supported. Now, which are these countries? What is the sphere of influence here? Why are they part of this organization? Break it down for us.
Well, China has this Belt and Road Initiative, whereby they have invested about $1.2 trillion. And through this, some 80 countries and about 20-30 international organizations are participating in the Belt and Road Initiative 3 summit meetings since it was launched in 2013. So what has happened in all of this is, with the Chinese investment, there is a softening of many countries, number one. Number two, China is the largest trading partner for over 128 countries. So China is also trying to weaponize trade by insisting these countries participate in the mediation and under the Chinese leadership. So these are all things which cannot be put in black and white, but many countries have benefited from the BRI projects, even though the primary beneficiary is China itself and its state-owned enterprises. But it has softened up many countries who now have joined the International Organization for Mediation.
Right. Professor Kondapalli, I had just asked, and we discussed the issue of disputed areas and disputes that China is involved in. But in such a scenario, having an organization for mediation, how will really these countries go about doing it with China? Will there be red lines? Will Taiwan be a red line, or the South China Sea and disputes therein? What are the red lines that China will really have over here, given that it itself is involved in so many disputes?
That's true, but Taiwan is governed by also the Taiwan Relations Act, which China had signed with the United States. And so in the 3 communiques plus the Taiwan Relations Act. So in the case of Taiwan, China cannot simply resort to the IOM and have a one-upmanship on the Taiwan issue. Likewise, on the South China Sea. South China Sea is bound by the UNCLOS, United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, in which China lost in the arbitration. Now, possibly China can do some mediation with Vietnam, with Malaysia, if not with Philippines. that is quite possible. They can do mediation with Brunei. However, these are not internationally recognized, like the International Court of Justice or the Permanent Court of Arbitration. These are not internationally recognized. The International Organization for Mediation is not under the law, international law. They can do some mediation between A and B and then come to a conclusion, but that is not recognized internationally. So the Chinese effort currently is to get this legitimized and later on possibly be recognized and then push it off as a legally recognized later on. If the two parties say that they have concluded a mediation agreement, it's quite possible that the issue doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Professor Kondapalli, thank you so much for joining us here. This is a big story. We'll be tracking the developments on that front to see where it's headed. But all good things must come to an end. And the political partnership between the two of the most powerful personalities indeed has come to an end. We break down the timeline of Elon Musk's exit from Trump administration and what it means for politics, business, and for America.
The bond and camaraderie between Elon Musk and Donald Trump was one of its kind. But now Elon Musk has exited the administration. The multi-billionaire who rallied behind Trump in his presidential campaign is no longer part of Team Trump. Trump has kept everyone guessing. In a social media post, Trump lauded Musk and said he will always be with us. However, chinks in the armor started surfacing long ago. The ties deteriorated due to public disagreements and diverging priorities. Musk's resignation comes even in the wake of a sharp criticism of Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Disputes were evident when Musk publicly criticized the bill and said it would reverse the savings made by the Department of Government Efficiency piloted by the tech billionaire. Musk private ventures also took a dent with this occupancy with Trump administration. Biggest investors of Tesla, SpaceX, and social media platform X demanded Musk spend more time in his businesses after the stock's values depreciated significantly. But the last nail in the coffin seems to be the OpenAI deal in the Middle East after Trump's visit to the region. Elon Musk tried to block the deal as his AI venture, xAI, was not part of the negotiation, but his efforts failed. Though this White House stint of Trump's first buddy has come to an end, everyone is trying to decode Trump's cryptic post, Musk will remain with us. Bureau Report, India Today.
Going for the President's comments.
Now, as Trump's tariffs and trade war continue with the U.S. Appeals Court allowing tariffs to temporarily stay in effect, India-U.S. trade talk is in their final lap. A U.S. trade delegation is likely to be in India the first week of June, with reports saying the talks are scheduled on the 5th and 6th of the month.
The Trump administration is furious. Its Liberation Day dreams trampled upon by the judiciary. A day after the New York-based Court of International Trade struck down Donald Trump's trade tariffs, the U.S. president launched a scathing attack on the U.S. court, alleging political bias, accusing judges of undermining presidential authority, and even turning his ire toward a conservative legal organization that helped shape his judicial picks. He has even asked, is it purely a hatred of Trump? On Thursday, an appeals court stayed the trade court's ruling, reinstating the Trump tariffs. But the Trump administration is furious over what it has called judicial overreach.
The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges.
Meanwhile, armed with the latest appeals court order, the United States is continuing with trade talks.
67%, that's tariff.
While the US has already sealed its trade deal with the United Kingdom, Trump envoys see more in the near future, and possibly one with India.
There are a couple of very large deals that are close. A couple of them are more complicated. And as we saw with the president's threat of 50% tariffs last Friday, the EU came to the table very quickly over the weekend. So now we've got the EU in motion also.
I saw last week, at the end of the week, 3 that were basically ready for the president's decision. I don't know if people have had that conversation with him yet, but yes, there are many, many deals coming, and there were 3 that are basically look like they're done.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll be watching for those 3 deals, obviously. Can you? Is India one of them?
I'm not going to talk until the president has to decide finally what's the final deal is. So what we think is pushed to something that's really great for America. He always adds a little bit more.
India's trade talks with the United States look to be in their final lap. A US trade delegation is likely to be in India in the first week of June, with reports saying the talks are scheduled on the 5th and 6th of June. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal was in Washington just last week for trade talks. The aim so far has been to seal the deal with the United States before reciprocal tariffs kick in on the 9th of July.
We are back on track on the growth trajectory, and we are working through international trading relations. A free trade agreement concluded with UAE, Australia, UK, the 4 EFTA countries, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. Well on track in our bilateral trade agreement with the United States of America, making fast progress with the European Union 27-nation bloc.
There are, however, reports that with the trade matter in the US courts, there is a possibility that India would slow the pace of negotiations and recalibrate the terms of the deal. India is also hedging risks by fast-tracking bilateral trade deals with the European Union and other countries, with Piyush Goyal set to visit the European Union next week. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
Trump always chickens out, or taco trade, is a new acronym that has spread across the Wall Street and the internet. The term, coined by Financial Times columnist Robert Armstrong, basically describes Trump levying steep tariffs against countries, specifically China and European Union nations, and then repeatedly pushing back deadlines.
Taco trade, or Trump always chickens out, has become the new term for United States President Donald Trump's tariff imposition and his frequent U-turns. During a press conference in the Oval Office, President Trump was asked about taco, and he rejected the idea that he's chickening out after setting destructively high tariff rates and then pulling them back.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country, and because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till July 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question. Go ahead. To me, that's the nastiest question.
Taco was first termed by the Financial Times' Robert Armstrong and later was picked up for use by the Wall Street traders, who see large sell-offs each time Trump's tariffs are announced, followed by recovery when the demand is cut down or removed. Over the past few months, Trump announced tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, the European Union, steel, autos and electronics around the world, starting off at high numbers only to retract or reduce the tariff rate subsequently. With Neha Kumari, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's now take a look at some other stories from across the world in World at a Glance.
The homicide trial of Diego Maradona's medical team for alleged malpractice was declared a mistrial by an Argentina court. The decision follows the removal of one of the 3 judges overseeing the case by an Argentine court. Manitoba declared a state of emergency and urged thousands of people in northern and eastern parts of the province to evacuate, as wildfires spread in central and western Canada. China successfully launched its Tianwen-2 mission early Thursday, embarking on an ambitious plan to collect pristine samples from a near-Earth asteroid and return them to Earth, a move that could make China only the 3rd nation to achieve such a feat, after Japan and the United States. The robotic Tianwen-2 spacecraft lifted off aboard a Long March 3B rocket from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan province. A judge denied bail to a crypto investor charged with kidnapping and torturing an Italian national for 17 days in a rented Manhattan townhouse to gain access to his Bitcoin. President Donald Trump signed full pardons for imprisoned reality show couple Todd and Julie Chrisley, who were sentenced to lengthy prison terms in 2022 for a conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million. Meanwhile, Trump commuted the federal life sentence of Larry Hoover, one of Chicago's most notorious gang leaders, according to his attorneys. Hoover has been serving multiple life sentences following both state and federal convictions over the past 5 decades.
That's all in the show. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and take care.